Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krensman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks, from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in a frigid Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends and sponsored by the Bamboozled Project. So we thank them, as always. More on them a little bit later in the show, actually, today. This is episode number 60. That would be Sincenta, if you're following us on the SAP dial today. And at any time, you can always send your questions to mypbshow@gmail.com. This is our first episode of the new year, so we say Happy New Year to you. Whether you are listening to us on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, you've got us. We are back. We apologize for the little COVID protocol hiatus. COVID protocol, all the blame going on that side of the studio. But we are back, and we are better than ever, and we welcome you to 2022, and we hope it is a better year than 2021.
Absolutely.
So welcome to the show. And because we have not been on in 3 weeks, there is, so much to run through that we could do today that it's basically, we're not going to be here for 3 hours, so we're picking the best of the best.
You can if you want.
You'd be fine with it. I do appreciate your presence. But we are going to start actually today, not with the Rangers, not with the NFL, although we will get to them. I decided to start the beginning of 2022 today with a really, just a great story. If we're going to kick off the year, let's kick it off with a great thing, and it has to do with hockey. Yeah. So I don't know if you are aware over the break, Dougie Sticks, but there was a really awesome story that came out of the NHL, just a complete feel-good story that came out the last week in December. The Vancouver Canucks were playing a game in Seattle at the Kraken back in October 23rd. Do you remember where you were October 23rd? I'm going to assume you probably don't.
23rd, Gentleman's Night at Biagio's rooftop.
Look at you. You probably were right on that, too, because you're always at Biagio's, which is a story for another day. But so the Vancouver Canucks are playing the Seattle Kraken in what really is I don't want to say meaningless early regular season game, but not really a lot of jazz for it, right? Just a basic night. 2 NHL teams playing in a new city, too. Seattle had just opened up. And I don't know if you're familiar, but the NHL teams will have an equipment manager, which is someone whose full-time job is to make sure all the sticks are on the bench, all the sticks are taped right, all the skates are, it's in charge of all the equipment.
Jerseys,
everything.
Travel jerseys.
Everything. So the Vancouver Canucks assistant equipment manager, Brian Hamilton, is standing on the bench, as he would do any day, any game in the NHL. And there is a woman that is, sitting behind the glass, because the benches are right behind the glass. Do you know where we're going here?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And this woman is consistently banging at him from the glass. Now, if you ever go to a game and you sit in good seats, you can try this move, but professional athletes don't turn around. They really don't, or else they would turn around all game. Yeah. So Brian Hamilton is just under the assumption this is some lunatic fan that's trying to get my attention, or someone on the team's attention, who's really trying to get the assistant equipment manager's attention. It's not really the autograph you were kind of seeking, right? Yeah. So he's on the glass, he's sitting there and this woman's banging, and she cannot get his attention all game, but she's persistent. He's probably annoyed, but used to it, right? End of the game comes, and he's walking off with the team on the little kind of walkway behind the bench. Now, because she cannot get his attention, she takes it to another step, and she writes on her phone, on the notes on her iPhone, what she's trying to tell him, right? So she's banging on the glass again, puts the phone up to the screen, which clearly gets his attention to turn. He turns and reads the following words on her phone. The mole on the back of your neck is possibly cancerous. Please go see a doctor, right? It's kind of crazy, right? Now, I would think if you're him, that's going to get your attention. And you now know, this crazed fan is not really looking for the assistant equipment manager's autograph. He's trying to look. So obviously it resonates with him. He takes this, and when the Vancouver Canucks return from their road trip, he goes and sees a doctor. It turns out that this random woman, whose name is Nadia Popovici, I hope I pronounced that right, who was a 2019 University of Washington graduate who was about to go to medical school. So she was into medicine to begin with, was right, because when he went to the doctor, he was diagnosed with malignant melanoma, which is phase 2, which means that it hadn't penetrated the skin. And I say this in parentheses, yet it would, but she caught it early. So because this woman was standing behind him, saw this mole on the back of his neck, because that's her viewpoint the whole game, she was able to get his attention, and now he has a good prognosis and was had it taken care of. And the doctors had told him in Vancouver that if this was not taken care of, in the short term, long term would have been a major problem.
Wow.
So apparently, Nadia Popovici, a Seattle Kraken fan, I think her parents have season tickets, if I remember reading the story, has spent a lot of time volunteering at hospitals. So she has seen a lot of melanomas. So the teams, the story, which is just awesome, the Canucks and the Kraken have announced a joint $10,000 medical scholarship for her to get towards medical school. So I decided to start the year with all the bad news in the world at the moment, and the weather stinks, with just a really good, awesome hockey story.
Nice. That's a good one.
Right? I
We
mean,
can give her a full ride, but we'll take
we
the
I want to say it crossed my mind too, but nonetheless, and actually there are videos out there. They were reunited because Vancouver then played at Seattle, I want to say a couple of weeks ago. And there are videos out there of them meeting for the first time, because again, it was just a chance. Look, here's a phone up against the glass. He's walking off. They never spoke to each other. So he was able to reconnect, I think, with the power of social media. Yeah. They had put out the story of Vancouver and said, who is this woman that was standing behind the bench on October 23rd, and where they were able to identify Nadia. So a really incredible story there. Shifting gears to hockey, the Rangers are in the middle of this long, really long road trip now. We haven't been on in 3 weeks, so to try and recap all of it would be difficult. Rangers lost a bunch of games to COVID, as the entire league did, as we talked with Dan Rosen when we were on last 3 weeks ago. The league kind of had a temporary pause, and that now seems like it was a month ago. But the Rangers now are out west. They started the road trip in Vegas and lost on Thursday. They won on Saturday night in Anaheim and lost on Monday in Los Angeles. The Rangers are fighting two opponents right now. When you travel on a West Coast trip for a while, it's hard, right? It's a long road trip. You almost expect it to not be pretty. You just want to kind of limit the damage. The other thing the Rangers are fighting is COVID. Artemi Panarin had COVID last week. He is now back. The Rangers head coach Gerard Gallant is now out with COVID. Shesterkin, their starting goaltender, is out with COVID. Ryan Reeves is out with COVID. There's others we could name. Kevin Rooney had it a couple weeks ago. It's just been ravaging the team. So you're fighting two things right now, COVID and a West Coast trip. I think you almost would say to yourself, if I could get out of this road trip at 500, I would take it and just limit the damage.
Absolutely.
So the Rangers will be back out at tomorrow night. Actually, it'll be the NHL debut of Brandon Schneider, a former first-round pick, tomorrow night. He'll be in the lineup in San Jose. And then, as weird as this road trip is, they leave the West Coast in San Jose on Thursday after being there for a week and a half and come play a game in Philadelphia on Saturday night. I don't understand that one at all. But if you're a Ranger fan, you tread water here. You got to be happy with where you are. And keep in mind, you only have one West road trip a year, thankfully. So if you can somehow win in San Jose tomorrow in Philly and kind of salvage the trip and kind of get out like 500 or so, you take it.
Nice. When do playoffs start?
End of April. Although the start date for that may be a little bit later now, because there's a lot of games that need to be made up because of COVID around the league. And what the league is going to do, and they probably will get the majority of it in here, but now they can't get it all in, is they had built in a 3-week gap in the schedule where there were no games in February because the players were going to go play in the Olympics in Beijing. They're not doing that anymore. So they're going to use that 3-week period to make up a lot of the games. They won't get them all in. And as Dan Rosen had said when he was with us 3 weeks ago, a lot of teams' arenas are booked, right? So it's not like the Rangers can make up the games any of those 3 nights. 3 weeks. You'll have Billy Joel in there. I'm sure you'll have the Knicks in there. So they'll make some of it up, but probably the beginning of April.
So do you think, let's just say for easy math, normally the season's 100 games, because we missed them that like each team might only have like 90 games or 80.
No, I think they're going to
cancel.
They're going to maintain the integrity. Each team plays 82 games. You're going to have to get 82 in to make it fair, because you can't have a team that only played 80 and let's say the 2 games they didn't play were versus a first place team, so it was an advantage they would have lost.
No, I'm saying everyone if you have to play 80, if normally everyone plays 82 because of COVID and we had to cancel games, like everyone plays 80.
No, because it wouldn't be fair because who didn't play the first place team, who got to play the second place
True.
team. So they're for competitive sake, it's going to have to be accurate.
True.
So they'll get it in though, and let's hope that happier days are on the horizons with COVID. I mean, you look fine.
I was fine. I just
good.
didn't want to spread. I didn't want to be a super spreader, bro.
At Undefeated Media Studios.
Yes.
You know, God forbid they quarantine Undefeated Media Studios with the new heat in here today.
Yes,
too.
yes, the heat bringing all the germs in and stuff like that. But yes, I was all right. A little bit of a tickle. Adrian had a little bit of a cough, but we're good.
I'm glad to know that the prayer vigil that I led nightly outside your apartment,
I saw it,
worked. Yes, we were out there in the frigid cold.
There's still some candles out there.
So let's shift gears to the NFL because there's so much going on with playoffs this week. Paul Farrington will be coming up in a couple minutes to run through the playoff matchups this coming week. But I want to talk about some other NFL topics. I want to talk about a personal thing first. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I know what you're going to say.
Do it.
You know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Because it actually ties into the first question. So if you listened to us last year, if you didn't, well, I guess 2 years ago now, if you didn't find us in 2021 and you were with us in 2020, you knew that I've done fantasy football in my big league for such a long time and I never win. Like I've been in the Super Bowl literally 6 times and lost all 6 of them. I was the Buffalo Bills of fantasy. And I see what you guys have queued up on the screen here in the studio. So we'll get there. So I made the Super Bowl again this year and was convinced, just because it's all I know, that I was going to lose again and go to 0-7 lifetime with more frustrations. Well, before I tell you what happened, I want you to know something.
Yeah.
I had Antonio Brown on my team and debated that week 17 whether I was going to play him. So I decided that Sunday of the game and the Super Bowl for my fantasy that I wasn't going to torture my family, my wife and 2 kids, by following it play by play for 6 hours, because I would have been.
That was your deciding factor?
No. Listen. No, so I wasn't going to do it.
Okay.
So I had a friend who knew that I decided to play Antonio Brown. All right. Now keep in mind, I don't know what's going on in any of the games. I'm not paying attention. Matter of fact, we took the kids to like an outdoor winter wonderland thing that day. I get a text from a friend, bro, Antonio Brown just walked off the field and quit the league with a hole. So knowing that, I'm thinking for sure I lost.
Yeah.
But somehow, and go ahead, you can do what you're going to do.
I got you.
Somehow, miraculously, the 0-6 curse is over. And I have finally, after doing it for 21 freaking seasons, won fantasy football. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That's enough of that.
Oh, you got to soak it in a minute.
No.
20 years.
No.
20 years coming.
No. That's all right. It's all right. So I just want to say that finally, I know what it's like to win fantasy football, but where I was going with it was Antonio Brown, with what this nut job did.
Wait, before you move on, we need a speech.
You want a victory?
I want a speech. I want a victory speech.
I will say this. The morning after, so I was going into Monday Night Football. Yeah. I was up like 49 and I was done, and he had the Pittsburgh tight end and kicker. So it was almost like barring some insane thing happen, I knew I had it. But when I woke up Tuesday morning and like I looked at my phone and it says, congratulations, you won your league, I actually screenshotted it and the confetti falling down in a little animation, because who knows if I'll ever see it again.
Yes.
But Antonio Brown, what a mess with it.
Keep trying.
No. We're not.
I want a victory speech, like you won an Emmy.
There's no victory speech. We're moving on. We're moving on.
Fine.
People don't want to hear a victory speech. If you want to, after the show,
I want to pull out a clip of your victory speech and we could put it on social media. But whatever.
We'll see. Maybe we'll film that separately. In the NFL, the Monday after the last games, which was this past week, it is always known as Black Monday, meaning it is the day that a bunch of coaches around the league normally get fired. And there were 5 coaches fired this week, and 4 on Monday and then 1 yesterday. We're going to get into that one. Let's start here. Miami fires Brian Flores, and it seems that people are going crazy about him. This happening. I was surprised at it. This is a guy with a quarterback. He's had a winning record the last 2 years, and his quarterback is Tua, who's not that good. So Brian Flores is going to get another job in the league. Minnesota fires Mike Zimmer. We can talk with Paul Farrington in a couple minutes about him. because he will know it better. I'm not sure I was really surprised on that one either. I don't really never understood the Mike Zimmer hype or why people like him as much. He's okay. Chicago, you knew they were firing Nagy. This was like rumored forever. I mean, it was like the least surprising of all of them. And Denver fires Vic Fangio, which he's been there 4 years. He hasn't really done a lot.
Yeah,
I get it. Although he was really adamant publicly the last week about campaigning that he deserved another year, which he had in his contract. But obviously the management team in Denver felt differently. Now, yesterday, I was traveling for my real job, and I landed on the plane last night to see that Joe Judge was fired with the Giants. And I got a couple texts about it. I don't know. Do you check like the MYPB
I
stuff?
thought you forgot it, but yes, I checked the NYPB stuff, and also I saw the Joe Judge thing. Are you going to go in?
Yeah,
because I got some intel.
Yeah, I want to say a couple things about this. If you're Joe Judge, and this, I was actually walking like down to the baggage claim with a buddy last night about this.
Yeah,
Joe Judge had 1 year left on his deal, right? He had a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
Next year here, right? When September comes and everyone's excited for football, can we be realistic that whoever the coach of the Giants is going to be, it's not going to have a good year probably, right? Daniel Jones is probably still there. But if you're Joe Judge, you're getting paid next year now not to coach the Giants. You could get a different job. You won't get a head coaching job right now, but you could probably go back to New England and work for Belichick again. It's not a bad deal. And dealing with the New York media, I don't look at it that bad. Now, here's the thing with the Giants, right? The Giants also, Dave Gettleman retired, quote unquote, retired the other day, but we know he wouldn't have been back anyway. So I would assume, and I would think that the logical steps here would be that you're going to let the GM pick the coach. So the GM should be fired, or should be hired, whoever that's going to be, before the coach. If you're the GM, what you need to decide on, first and foremost, and it's going to be the thing that probably everyone wants to know, is what is your stance on Daniel Jones? Is Daniel Jones the quarterback of the future on this team? Now, me personally, I don't think so. He's from Duke, right? When was the last good Duke football player? But if he isn't, are you then you have 2 top 10 draft picks? If that general manager decides, whoever the soon-to-be general manager of the New York Giants is, that I think Daniel Jones is the answer, what head coach is going to want to come here?
True.
Right?
Very true.
Now, if you look at it, so there are a couple of the, every year when coaches get fired.
I feel like that shouldn't be his call.
Well,
that's the coach's call.
But the general manager is going to have a deciding factor in it, because he's going to have to know how to draft. Because if you're going to move on from Daniel Jones, which you probably should, you have 2 first-round picks this year in the top 10.
And we don't know how to draft either.
And they don't know how to draft. But if you're these candidates, now here's what I'm getting to, right?
Who's the candidate?
So there are always a list of candidates every year, top candidates to replace. You have, and I pronounce this guy's name wrong every single year, and I apologize for doing this, Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, who's the offensive coordinator there. He's the architect of the Mahomes offense and all that good stuff that's been out there. And he's been passed over forever. Matter of fact, he interviewed for the Giant job when Joe Judge got it. Or you have Brian Dable up in Buffalo, who what he's done with Josh Allen in that offense. And you even have Harbaugh, who I don't love. But if you're, let's say you're those 2 top candidates, Bieniemy and Dable, and the Giants want to interview you, and the general manager who they just hired says, you know what, Daniel Jones is still going to be our quarterback. Why would you want that job?
Well, yeah. Also, his Mahomes offense would never work for Daniel Jones.
It wouldn't. Daniel Jones. Exactly. I almost think if you're a Giants fan, what you want to see happen here is whoever they do decide is going to be the general manager comes out and says, you know what, Daniel Jones, thank you. We'll use you. Maybe we package you and get something else manageable for the next year or two. Draft a quarterback to sit in waiting, because normally playing the quarterback the first year doesn't work in the NFL. Usually takes a year or two. And then maybe that's also more attractive to a coach. But if you're the Giants, this is the other thing I was thinking of last night on the plane. Think of the last 3 coaches they've had. They've had Joe Judge, they had Pat Shurmur, and they had Bob McAdoo. When they were all hired, none of them really at the time got you excited. Maybe you could argue Joe Judge, he comes from the Belichick tree, yada, yada, yada. But you can't go back. You have to do something that's going to get your fans excited here with a coach. You can't go out and hire someone that I don't know.
Joe Judge got us a little bit excited. He said the right things. We're going back to blue collar football. So
that
on
is
so
true.
Forth. So he got us excited, but I don't think he had the support from the office. It's good that they're cleaning house, but when the administration that was at hand, I feel like this all started and resonated from when they fired Tom Coughlin, and then they kind of screwed over Eli. So like that time period kind of set us down this dominoes of just like,
but now
misery.
And you're right, and you're factually right. But now, like if I'm looking forward and not back, the general manager, whoever it's going to be, who's going to get that job, and I know they've already reached out to interview some people, particularly in Arizona and San Francisco. But you have to make a decision here. The first thing you got to do is decide on the quarterback, and then deciding on the quarterback is also going to decide the sort of coach you're going to get in here. Because if you're Brian Daboll, and maybe these people look at it and say, okay, the Giants are going to suck, but I want my head coaching job, which is fair if you want to say that. It's not going to get you excited if you're an offensive-minded coach, head coach, getting your first job, and Daniel Jones is what you're working with. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah, and side note, there's rumor has it that they sat down with Joe Judge and had an interview with him, and they were like, we want to be excited about the future, this, that, and the other thing, and like part of his being fired is they felt that the last game of the season, there was no life to the team. They feel like they were like the players weren't playing at their fullest. Like they kind of just were like this. There's nothing to look forward to.
Yeah. So we didn't do picks this past week, obviously, because we were out because of COVID protocol. But I have my own. I basically take the picks that I do on this show, and then I have a thing I have to pick 5 games in like a pool every week. The Giant game, I was with you. I had the Giants getting 8 points, thinking that Joe Judge would be coaching for his career, and they didn't show up.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that game on Sunday, even though it was meaningless, didn't help his cause because it was brutal. And I sat down to put a couple things together. I sat down and thought of the game. And I watched the game because I didn't have fantasy. So I had said to Jess, I'm going to watch football because I'm not going to be stressed. I don't have to watch fantasy. And that was
enjoy it for once.
I'm going to enjoy it. But watching that game was not enjoyable. It was awful.
No.
I mean, Washington wasn't great either, but the Giants show you nothing. So we'll keep an eye on it here. But I mean, you've got to hope that the general manager that comes in here makes a decision. And if you're the Giants, it might be to package Daniel Jones, get something. You're not going to get a lot for him, but get a better quarterback in here for a year or two with a new coach and a system, and start working a draft pick in the top 10. Before we get to Paul, I want to do a little quick Jets recap on the season. And I'm going to say one thing. Zach Wilson, right? This was really the thing going into the year, as we just talked about quarterbacks playing the first year. Here's what I'm going to say about Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson showed you at times, minimally, a few times, not a lot, that he can play in this league, right? There were some plays during the year.
They almost beat the Bucs.
They did almost beat the Bucs. Now, again, I wasn't watching it because of fantasy. But
I watched that game.
Okay.
They almost beat the Bucs.
So Zach Wilson has shown you that he can be an NFL caliber quarterback.
Yes.
What you don't like this year with him is that it wasn't consistent. But at least like if you look at the run in the Jacksonville game, I think it was the 50-yard TD run of his. I think it was the Jacksonville game. He can play in this league. So now if you're the Jets, you want to see more consistency next year. And I do like their coach. I mean, their defense was awful, but I feel like a lot of that stuff will get fixed. But if you're the Jets, to kind of
build around them. They didn't build around Sam Darnold.
So now we'll use a word that the Giants and the Jets will now have to take the back seat to, and that is the playoffs as we move to one of the more exciting times in the sports year. Whether you're a huge football fan or you're just an overall sports fan, the NFL playoffs is always exciting. And this year, we get the honor and the privilege of getting more wild card games with the way it works. We're going to have 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and then 1 on Monday Night Football. They now have a Monday Night Football playoff game for the first time ever. We are going to bring in Paul Farrington, who is one of our NFL experts from the Paul Farrington Show. Let's see. Paul, how are you?
Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
I think you're on mute. Let's see.
Try one more time.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. How you doing, Paul?
Great. How about you guys?
Good. Happy New Year to you, my friend. Are you excited for the NFL playoffs?
Yeah, I would say I'm excited this year. Of course, as you mentioned, with the Vikings missing the playoffs, it does leave a little bit to be desired, but having the extra game is nice.
Before we get to the playoffs, I'm going to ask you one Minnesota question because, as I said, you are the Minnesota expert. Monday comes out, Mike Zimmer's fired, the general manager there is fired. let's just speak about Zimmer. Were you surprised? I mean, I don't think it was a surprise, right?
No, not at this point. Now, for Mike Zimmer, I want to give him credit. He came in, they had the 31st ranked defense when Mike Zimmer came in as coach. He left. They were also 31. But in 2 years, he got them to a top 10 defense in the league, number 1 overall, 2017. And following that NFC Championship season against Philadelphia, we're not going to talk about that game too much. He said in a press conference, when you go out and get a big-time quarterback and spend this money, it really it hurts the rest of the team because you can't allocate your resources to defensive line, to the secondary. And that's what he had been building in Minnesota. Rick Spielman ignored it and decided to go get Kirk Cousins, and look where we are now.
You know, and I was thinking the other thing of the 5 openings that are out there, the Giants, the Bears, the Dolphins, Denver, and the Vikings. I almost think Minnesota may be the most attractive if I'm a head coach because you've got Justin Jefferson there, you've got Thielen still, you've got Dalvin Cook. A lot of the other teams, if you're an offensive-minded candidate, as we just talked about, the few of them that are out there, I may like the Minnesota job better than the other ones that are out there.
There aren't many places, especially as a fan watching these games, you get frustrated because offensively, how many coaches would love to have, as you said, Thielen, Jefferson, Cook, Irv Smith will be back next year. There are a lot of weapons in Minnesota. Mike Zimmer, he never really got into the offensive game plan. That wasn't his thing. It's just when it's 3rd and 5 and you throw a screen and you throw a little dump off for 2 yards, that frustrates me as a fan when you have those weapons. So I think a guy, you were mentioning Bieniemy, if Bieniemy comes in, he's slinging around.
He may be the right fit.
That could be a nice spot.
He may be a fit. All right, so let's do this to make use of the time wisely. We've got 6 playoff games this weekend. Let's run through each of them briefly. So we start Saturday afternoon. I'm going to give credit to Vegas. They've dealt with a million things this year. The John Gruden situation earlier in the year. They had some personal tragedies off the field and somehow find a way to get in the playoffs, which is remarkable. So give them credit. Matter of fact, I went to my first NFL game in 15 years this year. I saw Vegas play at the Giants, and the Giants won. Vegas looked awful. I couldn't believe. So the fact that they're in the playoffs, based on what I saw in front of my eyes in November, is surprising. But they go into Cincy and a red-hot Joe Burrow. To me, in this game, the line is -5. I like Cincy -5. Joe Burrow has been ridiculously red-hot the last couple of weeks, and I'm not trusting Derek Carr in the playoffs. Where are you at with this game?
I'm with you. I'm with you on Cincy -5. First playoff game for both Burrow and Carr. And Derek Carr, even though he might not admit it, he's not a cold weather quarterback at all. I believe he's 5-10 all time in games under 50 degrees. Joe Burrow, the difference between him and Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson said Burrow has this swagger to him. I don't think he's going to be rattled. I think he's going to be able to come in and play confidently.
I agree. So we both have Cincy advancing in that game. All right, so the next game, I want to give the NFL a little bit of credit here. Sunday Night Football is on the other day between the Los Angeles Chargers and Vegas to see who gets the last spot. And the NFL surprisingly, yes, great game. The NFL surprisingly puts out the playoff schedule ahead of time. And they say that in the Saturday night primetime spot, which to me, out of all 6 spots, I think is the best spot to be in, is going to be the game in Western New York up in Buffalo. Now, at that point, you had a chance of it being the Patriots at the Bills, which is what we got, which is great. But you also had a chance of it being the Chargers at Buffalo, which probably would not have been that good of a game to me. You have a warm weather team in Buffalo, and I think it would have been a better matchup for Buffalo. But as a fan, we now have a really good AFC East kind of blue-collar, in-your-face rival game on Saturday night primetime. And it's going to be, I believe, like -5 up there in Buffalo.
It's going to be cold.
With the Patriots getting 4 in Buffalo. I'm going to publicly say this now, and I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. I want Buffalo to win the Super Bowl of the teams that are left. I'm not a Buffalo fan. I'm not jumping on the bandwagon, but that's what I would like to see win it. This is a bad matchup for them. And I got the Pats getting 4. I got Belichick in a playoff game getting 4, which I'm going to take. But I think it's kind of a pick-em here game. It's a 50-50 shot. Who do you like on Saturday night in Western New York?
I like Buffalo, man. I like Buffalo with the points. I know you and I we've been pretty big on Buffalo all year, Jeff. So I'm going to stay with them. New England, 3 out of 4 they've lost. They just got housed in Miami. It's not looking good. There's a New England website. I can't remember who it was, but they put out a poll and said, "Do you bench Mac Jones if he struggles in the first quarter?" Not that the poll was close, but just the fact that thought is running around the mind of at least some New England Patriot fans right now. It's a cause for concern. I think Buffalo's a better team. They're hotter. They have the better quarterback, and without hurricane conditions like we saw in their first game,
right?
I just don't think New England can keep up with them.
I think this is a consistency thing. Like, obviously Buffalo's the better team, but the Patriots are consistent, and Buffalo has not been consistent.
But has New England been consistent though?
I mean, they've been playing better. I think they've been playing better than they should be. I think their record's better than it should be.
Whether they're consistent or not, I think we can all agree that Belichick at this point will have his team ready to play. I mean, that we know. So I am going to take the Pats +4 there, but I would like to see Buffalo win, and I think Buffalo can win. But if I can get Belichick in a playoff game like that with more than a field goal and points, I'm going to take the Pats +4. Then the first game on Sunday, so I was really surprised. I looked at the lines. I was traveling for work on Monday, and I was sitting on a plane ready to leave Newark, and I saw that Tampa was -7 at home versus Philly, and I thought to myself, man, that just seems low to me. And now the spread has moved to -8.5, so obviously I should have made the bet there. So, again, Philly, first-year head coach, you congratulate them for getting in. They've done well. They never really have a stud running back. It's always a committee. Dallas Goedert's been a good tight end for them. Devonta Smith, rookie wide receiver at Alabama, has been good. But Tampa also has injuries. They don't. Mike Evans isn't 100%. They don't have Godwin. They don't have Antonio Brown. Leonard Fournette is still out. 8.5 is a lot. I think they'll win, but 8.5 is a lot. But I am going to take Tampa -8.5 because I think Tampa's defense is better than people think, and I think they're going to shut down Philly. Philly doesn't have a lot of weapons, and Tom Brady will find enough to get an 8.5 point cushion. What do you think?
I'm with you. I think it's probably about a 10-point game. But the cause for concern for me is the injuries, for Tampa Bay. That's why I'm actually pulling back on them as my Super Bowl pick for the NFC. I just don't think they have enough offensively to get there without Brown, without Godwin, and Fournette. Like you said, he's up in the air. But Philadelphia, just listen to these games, guys. Washington twice, Giants, Jets, Broncos, Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Lions. That's their wins. They don't have impressive wins on the season. Like, this isn't a playoff team to me. That's why it's so upsetting as a Vikings fan to see Philadelphia get in. We have our star-studded team on the sideline. I like Tampa Bay, but I don't know if Tampa Bay actually gets through the second round this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some issues long-term. I think the injuries will catch up with them, but I think for this week in particular and getting 8.5, I'm going to take them -8.5. So the next spread also surprised me a little bit. Dallas -3 at home versus San Francisco. Dallas is, to me, more talented. They're home. So I almost felt like this spread, when I looked at it, is just people are going to backtrack because of Dallas's playoff failures in the past, and it's going to scare people off. I would expect Dallas to win. Mike McCarthy is a better playoff coach than Jason Garrett ever was. We know that. And I'm not sold on San Francisco. I mean, last week in LA, they were as horrible in the first half as you could be in a must-win game. I think they had like 4 yards total going into the middle of the second quarter. And then they woke up. But to me, I like Dallas -3 here. What about you?
This has been the toughest one for me to pick because it seems like there's almost this grassroots movement to pick the 49ers. And I'm starting to kind of buy into the hype a little bit. I like San Francisco with the points. Dallas, when they're on, I mean, they can beat anyone in the league. We know that. They might be a top 3 team in football when they're playing their best ball. But San Francisco, they're going to try and control the pace of the game as they always do. Deebo Samuel, I mean, he is playing incredible football right now. Since he's out on the West Coast, a lot of East Coast people might not realize just how good Deebo is. I like San Francisco. They seem to have a little bit of that magic element when they sneak in. I do think, now, could I see Dallas running away with this? Yes, but my pick is going to be San Francisco in the points.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? And I think the pressure on this game is all on Dallas. I mean, Mike McCarthy, first home playoff game. This is why Jerry Jones went out and hired him. The whole thing when he hired him in his house and gave him a hug at the dining room table. And, Mike McCarthy got all emotional. I mean, this is why you were hired. So find a way to win this game. The next one is a rematch of a week 15 game that was not overly close. And that was the Pittsburgh Steelers sneaking in, going to Kansas City, and they are getting 12.5. Kansas City's going to win the game, but 12.5 is a lot in the playoffs. And I'm just going to think that Big Ben and Mike Tomlin will find something to keep it close, not win. I'm going here Pittsburgh plus 12.5 in Kansas City. What are you thinking?
I think it would have been nice for Ben to end his career taking a knee in Pittsburgh, take down the Browns, then you could rip out the heart of Ravens fans. And that's how Steeler fans are going to remember Ben. But I can't see this game going well for them. It was a 36-10 game last time they played. Travis Kelce didn't even show up for that one. I like Kansas City. I think Kansas City wins big. Now, some of my best friends are Steelers fans. I hope for their sake that it's a game. Maybe not. There are chances if Najee and the ground game get going early and can maintain control of the ball throughout the game. I cannot see ways that Pittsburgh keeps up with Kansas City. It looks like half the time Ben throws that he's giving literally everything he has to get the ball,
out. Yeah. The only way to me that Kansas City is going to score, right? We know that. When we saw that when they played 3 weeks ago. The only way to me Pittsburgh keeps this close is obviously Najee Harris has to have a good game, which he can, but they need Deontay Johnson, their best wide receiver, to show up. And if he can make a couple plays and he's capable of getting the deep ball, I think they can keep it within 12.5, but they're not going to win the game. I mean, I think we agree on exactly who's moving out there. The last game, which is the first ever Monday night playoff football game we're ever going to have, that is the Rams giving 4 to Arizona on Monday night. I like the Rams. Arizona I had Kyler Murray in one of my fantasy leagues. It just hasn't been good. Arizona peaked a little bit early in my eyes. And the Rams at home, Sean McVay's been there. Stafford, Cooper Kupp. I mean, Cooper Kupp was the best receiver in the game this year. I like the Rams -4.
I do too. I am also a victim of Kyler Murray in fantasy this season. That is tough. Guy, first 2 weeks, I thought he was going to be an MVP candidate.
Yep.
And then quickly that ship sailed. But I agree with you on the Rams. It will be interesting because Arizona should be getting J.J. Watt back. And I believe they were 7-0 with Watt this year. But the loss of DeAndre Hopkins, some of those other injuries the Cardinals are dealing with, I like the Rams in this. I like them with the points. They're a good football team. McVay's 9-1 all time against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So I think collectively we have forget the spreads. We have Cincy beating Vegas. We agree on. We agree that Buffalo is going to beat the Pats, although you're more confident than I am. We definitely both agree that Tampa's getting by Philly. We're kind of a little split on Dallas, San Francisco. We agree that Kansas City is getting past Pittsburgh, and we agree that the Rams are getting past the Cardinals. So we're on the same page, my friend, for the most part.
As usual.
As usual. Yeah, we usually do take a lot. All right, so let's play. We're going to get Dougie Sticks involved in this as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
all right.
We're going to get him to this. So, all right, we're going to play. We're going to pick now who's going to win the AFC and the NFC. And then we're going to look back in 4 weeks' time before the Super Bowl and see if we were right. Let's do the AFC first. I am going to go. So I'm not sold on Tennessee at all. And I understand they're getting Derrick Henry back, but Derrick Henry hasn't played in 2 months. I'm not sold on Tennessee. I think they've been a good story, and I don't think they have a really home field advantage there like a typical 1 seed would have in Nashville. So I am going to go with the Buffalo Bills. This is what you and I have said for a while. I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to go on the assumption that they can beat the Patriots this week. That means they would most likely get Kansas City the next week. They already won at Arrowhead this year. And then they would go into, their hardest path would be Tennessee, which, again, I think they can beat. So I am going to go on a limb. I'm going to say Buffalo comes out of the AFC. What about you, Paul?
I'm going to agree with you. Just for the sake of not taking Kansas City right now, I think Buffalo can play with them. We saw what they did earlier in the season. Obviously, a different Kansas City team, but I've been riding them all year with you. I'm going to stick with Buffalo.
Okay. Dougie Sticks, what do you like in the AFC?
I'm going to go different than you guys. I'm going to say Tennessee comes out of the AFC.
Dougie Sticks says Tennessee.
Just to be different.
And him being different, just so you know, he went to college in Buffalo. So it's a little bit of a stronger dagger.
I know, but it's the consistency factor.
So we have 2 votes for the Bills and 1 for the Titans. B-Rock, you want to make a pick, an AFC pick? Our producer here is not on camera. B-Rock, what do you like?
I'm going to go with...
Let's see if he's a homer. Let's see. He wants to be.
I think I know who he's picking.
Oh, yeah, he's going to pick him.
Kansas City. All right, so we have 1 vote for Tennessee. We have B-Rock for Kansas City. And Paul and I say Buffalo, and I'm impressed that B-Rock didn't say the Patriots.
I'm stunned.
Yeah, I'm stunned too. So I'm going to go to let's shift to the NFC.
Yeah.
We agree that we don't love Tampa with the injuries. Dallas has not really had a lot of playoff success. I don't like to do this, but and I don't want to be right on this one. I want to be right on Buffalo. I don't want to be right here. I am going to actually go with Green Bay, and here's why. There's one player to me that can go in Lambeau Field other than Aaron Rodgers, and well, obviously other than Aaron Rodgers. There's one quarterback that's here that can go into Lambeau Field and beat Aaron Rodgers in the elements. That is Tom Brady. He did it last year. However, the injuries are so bad right now that it's going to be hard to do. The only other one I can argue are the Rams, and you would say that the Rams are not a cold weather team, and they're not, but Stafford's their quarterback, and he played in Detroit, so he's got some experience playing in Green Bay. But I want to be wrong. I'm taking the Packers. Paul, who do you got?
Jeff, I think that's beautiful sports media right there. That is exactly what I feel. And it's hard to say that as a Vikings fan because I cannot pick the Packers. I just cannot pick them, even though to me they're the clear choice in the NFC. So if it's not them, it's going to be the Rams. So I'll say the Rams, but just know professionally,
Okay.
I pick the Packers.
So we have one. We have one for the Packers and me, one for the Rams and Paul and Dougie Stick.
So I was going to think Packers as well. I thought Paul was going to say Packers as well. So I was going to be different and say Rams. So now I'm the deciding factor. I think those are the two teams right there. I mean, Dallas is, just like Buffalo. They're super inconsistent. They have a lot of weapons. I'm going to go with Green Bay. I want to say Rams. But I don't think they have the consistency factor.
So that's two for the Packers. B-Rock, what do we got?
I got a hot take with Dallas.
Okay.
Wow.
He's got Dallas.
Even without Gallup, I think that offense is dangerous.
Okay. So can I say something about the Dallas offense? And it may even be like my lucky factor as to why I finally won my fantasy football. My opponent has Ezekiel Elliott in his lineup. This dude is so inconsistent. It's amazing. Yeah. Thankfully, I played him in a week where I think the team Dallas scored like 30-something points, and the guy had 4 points. I thought I was dead. I mean, if you told me Dallas was going to score 34 points and my opponent had Ezekiel, I figured he would have had at least 20 points. The guy had 4 points. He's totally inconsistent. Crazy. So in the NFC, to recap, we have 2 picks for the Packers. We have one for you took B-Rock. Well, no, in the NFC.
You took Dallas.
You took Dallas. And
Paul took the Rams.
And you took the Rams, right. And Paul
we took Green Bay.
You and I each
Paul
Green
took
Bay.
Rams.
So 2 Packers, 1 one Rams, and 1 Dallas. And you are wearing the green shirt, so you should be picking the Packers. Even though it seems like we all here do not like the Packers. That is the familiar theme. But we are at least honest. I try to be subjective. Paul, because when people listen, I want to be fair. I don't want to just be a homer and be like, oh, the Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup. They're going to be 82-0 and they're never going to lose in the playoffs. And Igor Shesterkin's not going to let it go the whole year. That's not why people listen. So, Paul, we thank you. We will have you back. We will see how we do, but I'm sure we'll have you back before we get to that point to discuss some future playoff games. Enjoy the games this weekend, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
That is Paul Farrington of the Paul Farrington Show. We always highly encourage you to check out his show.
Absolutely.
So at least we are, we've gotten to the NFL playoffs.
So we went through the stats and the figures and who we think is going to win the playoffs and the actual sport. But how about a little drama to mix in here? The Chargers timed out their way out of the playoffs. You don't call that. I mean, it seemed like all the interviews, the Raiders were going to let that clock run because they called that timeout.
Do you know I read that if that had happened and they timed out, Vegas, not the sports team, the city, the sports books there would have gotten murdered on a tie because people were betting on a tie because they knew that it was like a meaningful thing, and Vegas would have got their clocks cleaned had the Chargers not run a timeout.
Speaking of clocks cleaned and Vegas, I sent this to you. Draymond Green, for whatever reason, look, Draymond, you're good, but I don't know how it's an honor to be starting a game just because Clay's starting a game. That doesn't make any sense to me. But it was said that Draymond wanted to be on the court starting the game when Clay came back, so he was going to come in for the tip off and then come off. And if you bet all the unders, people were betting like $5,000 and getting
you have to. The reason why Vegas needs to pay people for that, because if Draymond Green played for 10 seconds and tore his ACL, they would still not pay. They wouldn't. They wouldn't pay you if the overs, right?
Yeah. How can you not pay those out?
So, last thing, little exciting news. We led with exciting news on the show today, and we're going to close with exciting news. We're going to give some credit to the Bamboozle Project, we thank them for sponsoring the show. They did create, and they said it was going to happen, and like a Christmas miracle or New Year's miracle, whatever you want to believe in, or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa miracle, whatever you want to celebrate. We have, if we want to put up on the screen, the Mypb shirts that are now available online. You can see the Mind Your Pucking Business T-shirts, which they did a really good job with. I went on the website the other last night when you sent it to me and looked at it. They have all different sizes you can get. It is an interesting looking shirt, I will say, but it does look good. So we thank them for doing that. Now, I believe the promo code that we have still works, right?
Yes,
MYPB. So if you're following, there it is. If you're following on the video feed today, 25% off promo code MYPB. It will knock off an additional 25% of the shirt price that you will see on the website.
Yeah.
So
it takes off about $7.
It does.
Yes.
And you can have your own shirt for about $20.
Mypb, Mind Your Pucking Business, Bamboozle Project collaboration.
There we go.
And you can get those all at, where is it? Bamboozleproject.com.
We will put a link up on our social media feeds this week. We'll get something up about that. So you can go out and get your MYPB swag.
Yeah, the first swag, right?
The first swag. And you know what? It may seem weird to get a t-shirt on a day like today where it's 18 degrees, but the summer is going to come around.
Perfect undershirt. Perfect undershirt.
And the summer will come along in the spring. And people around here, like they always do, like idiots in March when it's 45 and they feel like it's warm, will be wearing t-shirts. So.
No, I notice a lot of people like they'll buy sweatshirts and sweaters like at the end of winter. Like it's like winter's over now, summer. So now's the perfect time to get your MYPB shirt. So it's just in time for spring.
You can wear it to the pools that you go to in things. So that is a wrap for today. Again, with the Rangers, they are out west. They have one more in San Jose tomorrow. They come back to play Philly on Saturday night. We have the NFL playoffs this weekend, and you and I will be back on a regular slot on Tuesday next week. I apologize for that hiccup. That was my travel with work. We're happy you're good after being in quote-unquote COVID protocols. And I should say that we did make weekly picks in week 16 before we left that last week, and we did not have a winning week. We were actually 2-3. It came down to the end of a game. So we finished our regular season record for the season because we didn't do week 17 at 11-5. So that is 11 winning weeks, 5 losing weeks. We made you a lot of money. Thank you, B-Rock, for clapping over there in the corner. I do see you out of the corner of my eye.
Would have been 12 if we did it, but hey, that's a big win right there.
You know what? It actually would have been 12 because like I said, I made picks over the weekend, and I know I would have picked, but I'm going to be fair. We were 11-5. We were not 12-5.
That's still great.
So send your questions at any point, whether they're NFL related or hockey related or life related. We can take your life questions or cooking related to mypbshow@gmail.com. And that is a wrap for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will talk to you next Tuesday. We will be back. Enjoy the NFL playoffs this weekend.